Hi everyone. So my name is Shreyas and I'm from New
Hi,
Indian
Shreyas.
Express.
Hi.
First of all, congratulations on putting together this show. I have seen the show, and the only thing that I can say it is heart-wrenching and mesmerizing at the same time. So Richie, I just wanted to start with you and begin the conversation by asking, how your shows are so much rooted, even Delhi Crime and even Poacher, something that I saw in Poacher as well, how they are rooted so much in their writing. Uh, so what was the writing process like, and how did you come up with these characters and the world which they inhabit, apart from
Oh,
the
the,
research that went in? Yeah.
I mean, that is it. Actually, the research dictates and defines what the story is going to be and who the characters are going to be. It emerges out of the reality of the situation. I approach it as if, what can I do to assist the real people in a cause that I believe is very noble? So when that's happening, and I'm learning more and more about it, I see the characters emerging. I see details emerging. All the people I meet, sometimes I meet somebody in passing. And
Mm,
that's just a little detail that, there was a biologist I met who had many, many dogs in Kerala, and all he talked about was getting another one. So I made
okay.
that part of Mala's life. There are details that end up contributing, but the big overarching story, plot, characters, threads are all rooted in the real people I meet, and then I start to put it together in a dramatic structure. So as you know, I use the tricks of storytelling, whatever we can do to make it tense and build it up. But for example, tension and thriller aspects, they're not in a script. That's in the execution of it, where it becomes a genre. But I certainly feel that if it's not on the page, it's not going to exist. It's not going to exist in the final version of it. So everything has to be laid out for the actors and the crew to see what's what. So if you were to read the script of Poacher, it would be very, very similar to what you were seeing at the end.
Right. And how do you create that balance of having the characters' journeys? At one point, we get to know them better as human beings as well. And at the same time, they're part of this investigation. So how do you create that balance in order to not, let one overpower the other?
So in this case, actually, because the case was so fascinating and so unique, and thrilling, I just decided to let the case take over in terms
Hmm.
of the structure of everything. And whenever I found a moment that I could let it pause or breathe, I would then insert character moments wherever I could. But as you've seen, like the beginning of episode 1, the case just begins. We just go
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
And these people are thrust into it, and we get to know them along the way. But I'm not stopping. I'm not waiting in episode 1 to get to know these people. I'm just going. And so hopefully people will come along for that ride, because I think their patience will be rewarded.
Yeah. Definitely. It's as you said, it's the later episode that we come to know about the
Yes.
characters even more. And that brings me to Roshan and Dibyendu, both of you. Now, once you uh, go through this world that Richie has crafted, once you read the script and once you get to know your characters, how do you interpret them and also the world in which they exist?
So,
You can start here.
yeah, Richie's script informs you really well as an actor when you read it. Everything you need to know about your character is already there, and like I've said this before, but it's not in descriptions; it's in the decisions that they're making or in the
Hmm.
response that they have to, in conversations that they're part of. So you can paint a whole picture of the character with that. Now with this one, there's also the added opportunity that these people are out there, continuing to do the work that they do. So there is a channel of communication that can be opened up. So I actually managed to get in touch with the person who my character is based on.
Okay.
Try to understand him, his life, his reasons, the way he looks at the world. And he is this like really inspiring, exciting man with so much more to offer. So there was enough to draw from there as well.
All right. Dibyendu?
See, एक्चुअली ये कैरेक्टर जो है जो मैं प्ले कर रहा हूँ या फिर ये जो पूरी स्क्रिप्ट है पोचर इट इज बेस्ड ऑन रियल लाइफ ऑफ कोर्स यू नो दैट
Yeah.
एंड और ये अपना कैरेक्टर जो है रियल लाइफ के इंस्पायर्ड कैरेक्टर है बट बहुत कम टाइम होता है कि एक एक्टर को एक फुल्ली एक फुल जर्नी वाला कैरेक्टर मिलता है इन लाइफ, बिकॉज एक है जो इसका पर्सनल लाइफ है, एक है जो इसका प्रोफेशनल लाइफ है, और जो वर्क लाइफ है, ये दोनों कहीं ना कहीं कोलाइड करते हैं, और किसी एक को ये, हम दोनों को बैलेंस करने की कोशिश करता है, किस तरीके से एक तरफ उसका रुझान रहता है एंड किस तरफ वो his main focus system and main thing and main उसका क्रूसेड ही इस बात पे है, तो उसको उसको ये लगता है कि ये आई एम वर्किंग फॉर अ बिगर कॉज और समथिंग लाइक दैट, एंड दैट इज प्रीडोमिनेंट इन दैट कैरेक्टर. सो इस तरीके के कैरेक्टर जब होता है तो आपको बहुत मजा आता है, क्योंकि बहुत रेयर आपको इस तरीके के कैरेक्टर प्ले करने के मिलता है. तो एज एन एक्टर मैं ये बात कह रहा हूँ कि जब मुझे ये स्क्रिप्ट मैंने पढ़ी है, और इतना एच्ड आउट, इतना डिटेल रिसर्च स्क्रिप्ट है जिसमें से बाकी कैरेक्टर्स भी इतने अच्छी तरीके से निकल के आ रहा है, तो ये अभी रोशन ने जो बोला ये बहुत ही करेक्ट है कि अब एक्चुअली ये पूरी फिल्म ही एक कैरेक्टर है वो, जहाँ अलग 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 कंपोनेंट मिल के एक पूरा फिल्म को, एक पजल को सॉल्व किया जा रहा है. सो इस तरीके का जो सब्जेक्ट है, जहाँ आप इंडिविजुअली आप जिस तरीके से आप थोड़ा सा अगर आप कंट्रीब्यूट करते हो, तो वो एक लार्जर कंट्रीब्यूशन में एक थोड़ा सा पार्ट हो जाता है. सो ऐसा कैरेक्टर करना एक बहुत ही, आई एम लकी टू हैव दिस काइंड ऑफ स्क्रिप्ट एंड गेटिंग द रोल. सो बहुत कम मिलता है ऐसा कैरेक्टर प्ले करने के लिए.
Richie, I wanted to come to you next about the visual style of the film. I noticed that there is a distinct use of red, green, and blue in terms of the lighting and in terms of the overall tone that the that the series has. So, what were your discussions with the DOP like to come up with this, very distinct visual style that gives you a very visceral feel altogether?
Yeah, it was actually to darken the forest. It was to create a jungle environment that was not friendly for human beings, because jungles generally are not friendly. If you go and stand in a jungle and you just stand still, eventually the jungle will consume you.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make it uninviting. So the blue was to add to the darkness of the circumstance that we were talking about. Having said that, despite that, it's still extremely beautiful.
Yeah.
Which tells you, if we're trying to make it dangerous and unalluring, look how beautiful this paradise actually is. It can withstand anything we do to it. And so that was one of the main discussions Johan and I had. And of course, the red is standing out. I mean, in the very first shot of episode 1, there's one red spot, which you know what that is.
Yeah.
So the red does, there is a very specific use of red and what red is doing in this thing, because it's not a color that you generally find when you first glance in the jungle. It's something is wrong if you're seeing it, aside from red ants and the occasional parrot that has red stripes on it, calling attention to itself. The fact is, red is a color that calls attention to itself, and you do not want to call attention to yourself in the jungle. So if it's spilled, there's a real problem.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. Adding on to this, there is also some animals that you've inserted in scenes. Some scenes begin with, the visual of a fox or a tiger or an owl sitting somewhere, and it seems like we are seeing it from their point of view, as if they are observing the investigation, as if they want justice for their friend elephant who has died. So how was that as a idea come to you, and how did you execute that?
Yeah, I mean, as an idea, you go into that environment. The research I was doing in Kerala, you're guests of many, many, many creatures in that environment. Most of them you'll never see in the daytime, but certainly they're watching you and they're aware of you. And I just felt that because this is a story about people who are trying to defend the animal kingdom and people who are trying to destroy it, animals themselves, for the most part, would not differentiate in reality between which human is good and bad from a distance. So, obviously there's lots of stories and examples of wild animals who are relating to human beings that have showed kindness as when they were babies or cubs. But generally, my feeling was either an animal is watching indifferently and not bothered, or is scared to death as soon as any human being, good or bad, appears. Having said that, I'm also showing the jungle's reaction to the opening episode. what has happened to this elephant. And from a charismatic species standpoint, it's terror. And from a parasitic species standpoint, it's okay, it's here, we're going to feed off of it. This is the jungle. So it's a very complex relationship of what we leave behind. But if you've seen all episodes, you also know what it amounts to at the end of episode 8. All of this kind of culminates in the perspective of the animal kingdom, which is generally hidden from human beings. So I wanted to give a life and a voice to that. And I wanted to showcase, this is something that 10 years ago would not be possible with the technology in film. So I figured if we're in this state right now where anything is possible in terms of depicting imagery, can we use it now for a real benefit for us to understand a different point of view? The best in animation, the best in technique, everything we can use to make this reality come to life. And give us as a human beings another point of view, because there are some things we have depicted that have never been seen by a human being,
Right.
Unless you are perpetrating that crime.
Right. That's very fascinating. In one of your interviews, you say that all of your stories are kind of guided by a rich sense of conscience that you carry as a human being. Uh, what do you think? What are your thoughts on, how important is it for filmmakers and artists to have a conscience when they're telling stories?
I think it's important for a human being to have a conscience, period. And I think we all have them. The question is, how much are we able to listen to them and give importance to them on a daily basis? And the thing with filmmakers is we have time to contemplate things. It's one of the privileges we're afforded in society. And there's an entire industry set up to allow us time to contemplate, observe and contemplate. So I think that I can't speak for other people, but certainly for me, I feel that if the way the world is right now, it's going to give me time to think about things. I owe it to the world as a debt of gratitude to act on my conscience based on that privilege.
Fair enough. Just taking that further to Roshan and Dibyendu as well. Both of you sort of play characters who are very idealistic, who want to just put an end to this ivory trade. Dibyendu's characters, in fact, is suffering from cancer, and the last thing that he wishes to do before he may die is just catch these people who are behind this trade. So when you play such characters, does something change in you as a human being? Do you start seeing things differently in the world around you?
देखिए, सबसे पहली बात तो ये मैं पहले ही कह चुका हूँ कि एक the beauty of the character is that it has a strong personal life, and he is actually continuously chased by his nemesis own, like उसके भी खुद के डेमन्स है जो उसके साथ वो लगातार फाइट कर रहा है, ये सारी चीजों जो आपने कहा है। तो ऐसी चीजों को अगर आप जब पर्दे पे उतारना चाहते हैं, जब ट्रांसलेट करना चाहते हैं, आप इंटरप्रेट करना चाहते हैं, तो आपको किसी ना किसी तरीके से सबसे पहले तो स्क्रिप्ट पे ध्यान देना पड़ता है, उसके बाद अपना डायरेक्टर ऑफ कोर्स इज लाइक वन पॉइंट ऑफ कांटेक्ट, जो आप ही इज द राइटर डायरेक्टर, ही इज द क्रिएटर, सो वो एक सेम पेज में एक रहना होता है। लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी आपको कहीं ना कहीं, बिकॉज इट्स बेस्ड ऑन रियल लाइफ कैरेक्टर, सो मैं उनसे मिला नहीं था, कभी पहले मिले नहीं थे, लेकिन उनके बारे में रिची के साथ मेरी बात बहुत हुई, और उसके बाद स्क्रिप्ट में एक ड्रामेटाइज किया गया, एक फिक्शनलाइज किया गया। उसके बाद जब ये कैरेक्टर आप पढ़ते तो आपको पता चलता है कि लाइक somehow you can relate to this character, and I have, like, that is the connection I have with the society, that I know this kind of characters, and if what happens, अगर मेरे साथ ऐसा होता, अगर मैं वो कैरेक्टर होता, मैं उस जगह में होता तो क्या करता, बिकॉज अगर मैं लाइफ को प्रायोरिटाइज किया है क्रूसेड्स के लिए, एट द सेम टाइम I have an existing family, I have something that continuously bothering me, but that is the conflict, that is the conflict of the character. And when you have this much of conflicts in a character, then it's actually so damn real. तो आपको बहुत ज्यादा कुछ करने की जरूरत ही नहीं होती. You just be there in the situation and listen and act और behave. आप बाकी जो कर रहे हैं उसके साथ रेस्पॉन्स करते चलिए, ऑटोमेटिकली इट विल कम अप. सो इस
Right.
तरीके से मैं उसको देखता हूँ. मतलब वो बहुत ज्यादा सेरिब्रल है नहीं, सुनने में काफी लग रहा है, हो सकता है कि मतलब कि, लेकिन ये बहुत दिल से निकलना चाहिए. बिकॉज ये एक्चुअली आप ऑलरेडी उस कैरेक्टर में होते हो, बिकॉज आपने कोर को पकड़ने की कोशिश किया हुआ है. सो
बराबर.
आउटर एवरीथिंग इज हैपनिंग, that is the reflection of the core. So I know
बराबर.
that's how I tried to, but sometimes you achieve, sometimes you don't achieve. I don't know, but like that is basically my process. I want to do that. So,
Makes sense. Makes sense. Roshan, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to take too much of the work back home with me, but with a project like this, it gets difficult now because the information itself is overwhelming and it's so many things that you didn't know about. So it gives you perspective in a way of, how there are far more important things in the world, important people doing important things in the world. So that gets very difficult to ignore. I guess like connecting it to conscience, what we were talking about earlier. The one thing that's common in all of these characters that all of us have really enjoyed playing. Nimisha's not here; she plays the heart of the show is
Yeah.
Nimisha. The one thing that's common with all of them is that they're like very passionately acting based on what their conscience is telling them to do. In they like very very definitely believing in what their conscience tells them is right. And yeah, they have all of these adventures along the way. They have all of these experiences along the way. They have fun definitely doing the things that they do. They really enjoy doing it, which is why the hardships don't matter. The fact that there's no glory that comes to them, that doesn't matter. So those are my takeaways, that like you figure out where you stand, you figure out what your heart tells is right, and then go out there, do it, and have fun doing it. Definitely, the only way you can do anything good is if you're having fun doing it. So you have to at some point absorb all of this, and then also learn to detach just enough so that you can enjoy the ride, I guess.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Just one last question to Richie. Now this show has been, it has multiple languages. There's Malayalam, there's some Bengali, there's Hindi, there's dominantly English. So while you're directing the show, and possibly Malayalam is a language you may not know or understand, so how do you gauge that a certain scene is going the way emotionally, the way it should be? And what is that? Is it a challenge to like just take that through?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much work has gone into the Malayalam translations before we get to set. So, and they're comparable in terms of length. So we have a dual draft script, right? On one side you have English, on the other side you have the other language. With Hindi, Bengali is not a problem. I can follow, I
Right.
can listen. With the Malayalam, for me, I cannot recognize the language. So basically, during a shot, any given shot, my assistant Parinaz is with me, and she has the script in front, and she's just tracking where we are in the scene as the lines are being said. I'm watching it in the monitor, and I'll just glance, and I can see where they should be. Malayalam, is it corresponding to the English? And I just glance back and forth while I'm watching, so I see where they are, and at that point I know what a human being should be doing at that point, especially this particular character. I know the zone that they should be operating in. So if they stray, or if, which is very rare if ever, or if something is misstep or something is slightly off, I can see exactly where they were in that moment. Especially if it's a long dialogue. If it's short, I don't need to do that. I know what's going to be said. But long dialogues, like Roshan has a long monologue in episode 2, which is multiple pages. Those kinds of moments, I need to track that. So it's just figuring out a system basically, and checks and balances, and watching it. But I've cast Roshan for a reason. He knows what he's doing, and so I can't micromanage his performance. I can only see if something is really really off, and I don't remember if ever that even happened.
Certainly. That's all I think from my side. Thank you so much for this conversation, and all the best for the release of Poacher on 23rd.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shrek.